back to the subject Object-Oriented Analysis and Designs. Today's topics are UML class diagram, types of UML diagrams, basic class diagram symbols and notations, and one case study using class diagram. So the application is courseware management system. Coming to the UML class diagram, UML is a standard unified modeling language and it's an international industry standard graphical notations used for describing, visualizing, constructing and documenting the artifacts of a software system. And this class diagram is the backbone of almost every object-oriented method, including the UMLs. So they describes the static structure of the system. So this class diagram is describing the static structure of the system. Coming to the types of UML diagrams, there are totally 9 types of UML diagrams are there. 4 diagrams comes under the structural diagram and 5 diagrams comes under the behavior diagram. So the structural diagrams are the class diagram, component diagram, deployment diagram and package diagram. The class diagram is the structure of each class relationship between the classes, whereas a component diagram that makes up the softwares and dependencies between them. Coming to the deployment diagram, this is a physical layout of the overall system. The package diagram is a grouping of model elements such as classes and relationship between the groups. Coming to the behavior diagram, use case diagram comes under the behavioral diagram. Functions provided by the system and relationship with external users and other systems. Sequential diagram, interaction of objects among the time axis. Collaboration diagram, objects interacting to implement some behavior within the context. State chart diagram, model lifetime of an object from creation to the termination. Generally this state chart diagram is just like a flow chart diagram which will represent the overall starting timeline from the creation to the termination. Coming to the activity diagram, this represents the system operations flow. So all these are the various types of UML models. So there are 4 models which comes under the structural diagram and 5 models which comes under the behavioral diagram. And especially we are going to talk about this class diagram. Coming to the basic class diagram symbols and notations, the class represents an abstract of entities with common characteristics. Association represents the relationship between the classes. So coming to this, a class can be represented with a rectangle box. So here this is nothing but representing divided into the compartments. So coming to this, we can see this is a rectangle box. So a class can be represented with a rectangle box and the compartments are divided into 3. The first partition will represent the name of the class, which should represent in the bold or capitalized. If you want to write the name of the class diagram as a student details, we can mention that student details, that is a D student. This is the name of the class. And the second partition will represent the attributes. So whatever the attributes of a student, to represent the attributes of the student, there is the name of the student. And if you want the address of the student and mail ID. So whatever the attributes which will represent the student details can be mentioned in the attributes. And the third partition will represent the operations. So operations are the methods. So this is the third partition which can be represented. To access the student details, we need to mention in terms of method. So here, to get the details of the student, we can just mention the get method, get D student, which will represented with the parenthesis. So this is a method representation, name of the method and parenthesis. So the first partition will represent the name of the class. Second partition will represent the attributes. And the third partition will represent the operations or methods. So this is a representation of a class. Coming to the next one, active class. So this active class initiates the control and flow of the activity. So while passive class stores the data and serves the other classes, and this active class within a thick border. So this can be represented with a thick border. So this class is only one rectangle box which is very dark, thick in border, and this is called as an active class. So this active class is nothing but which is used to control the flow of activity, and the passive class stores the data and serves the other classes. So this is just like a parent class and it serves all the elements to the other classes. Coming to the next one, visibilities and operations. So the visibilities are nothing but, so how you are going to make this signify who can access the information contained within the class. So the accessifiers, or we can also call it as a visibility. So that can be represented with plus, minus and hash symbol. The plus will represent the public, the minus symbol will represent the private, and hash symbol will represent the protect. These are called as an accessifiers or visibilities. So to access the elements of one class to the another class, as we know that there are different types of elements like inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation in object-oriented programming languages. To access the elements from one class to the another class, we need to give the accessifiers or visibility for the attributes as well as for the methods. So before going to represent the attribute, we need to mention the visibility of that attribute, whether we are going to give the public access or private access or protect access. So here, if you see, this can be represented as, the attributes can be represented as, initially it should start with the accessifier or visibility, name of the attribute, colon, and data type. So this is the type how to declare the attributes. And coming to the operations, we need to represent the visibility or accessifier, plus, minus or protect, depend upon what kind of class it is, whether it is a parent class or a child class, or it is a dependent class, or it is an associated class. So what kind of class it is that we are going to define. Based on that, we need to represent the public, private and protected. So here you have to mention the visibility or accessifier, name of the operation, colon, we need to represent the data type, right? So here after the name, parenthesis. So this is a type how to represent the operations. So whenever we write a class diagram, we need to first draw a rectangle class, identify whether it is an active class or it is an passive class. Based on that, a class can be divided into three partitions. The first partition will represent the name of the class. The second partition represents the attributes. The third partition represents the operations. And while we are defining the attributes, we need to remember what kind of attribute it is, whether it is in public, private or protect. Based on the type of accessifier or visibility, we need to mention the operator before the attribute. The same like to the operations. Before going to define the operator, we need to mention the visibility or accessifier, then write the name of the operator, and then colon, write the data type. Coming to the next one, association. So association is nothing but represents the static relationship between the classes. So we can know that what is a class A and class B. Based on that role as a, whether it is a parent or it is a child, what is the role of that particular class. If it is having the equal priority, then we can mention it as an association. So association will represent the whole or part. If class A is there, class B is there, we need to mention a solid line between these two classes if their role is equal. For example, if you take the student information, class A is for the result analysis, class B for the details of the student. So both are important to get the information of the student, to know the result of a student, particular student. So if the class A is the personal details of the student, and this is the result, that is a total mark list. So these two are having an equal priority. So in that case, we need to mention a solid line between the two classes. So which is called as a association relationship. Coming to the next one, multiplicity or cardinality. So as we know that, what is the type of dependencies? Whether the dependency between the two classes is one to one, one to many to one, or many to many. So the same way we need to represent that using the association between the two classes. This is a class A and class B. On this relation, we need to mention whether it is having one to many or it is having many to many. So on this relation, we need to mention that whether it is having the one or more than one relation, or zero or one relation, or zero or many relations. So what is the type of relation that they are having? For example, if you take the personal details of the student and result analysis. So here, if the overall mark sheet is only one, we'll have only one-to-one relation. If this mark sheet is having more than one result analysis, like if you're having first year result, second year result, one more class, third year result, one more class, you're having more than one classes which is having the result analysis of first year, second year and third year of a single student. So the single student is nothing but this is a personal detail of a one student where they are having more than one results regarding the first year, second year and third year. In this case, we can mention that one to many, where there are many marks, memos which are related to a single student. So this will represent the multiplicity or cardinality. So to represent that, we can use a association symbol. On that, we need to mention what kind of cardinality it is. Coming to the next one, constraint. So this constraint is represented as a comment on the arrow mark, like whatever the relation that we are using. So whatever the class it is, on that class, based on the relation, no matter whether the relation is a generalization or association, whatever it is, so the constraints can be represented to write the comments on this arrow mark or on this relation. So we need to represent in the flower brackets or a curve braces. Coming to the next one, composition and aggregation. So these two are the types of relations between the classes, and the relationship is, when it comes to the composition, is a special type of aggregation that denotes a strong ownership between the class A and whole and class B is a part. So here, if you talk about the aggregation, this becomes as a whole and B will becomes as a part of the whole, and that can be represented with the so these can be represented, the whole can be represented with a diamond shape, and that is can be going to be filled diamond. The filled diamond will represent the relationship as a whole class, and the next one is a part class. The part is also represented with the simple aggregation. This is a simple aggregation, and this is called as a whole aggregation. So as we know that these are nothing but how they are dependent from one class to the other class. So these are the two symbols which is used to represent the whole or that is a simple aggregation, whole or part of an aggregation. Coming to the next one, generalization. So generalization is just like an inheritance. As we know that inheritance is a parent class and the child class, where the child classes are dependent on a parent class, which can be represented. This is a class A, this is a parent class, these are the child 1 and child 2 classes. So this is a generalization where two classes are dependent on the parent class. Generally this is also called as an inheritance. In common words, this is a very confusion technique, like between the inheritance and the generalization. So no matter whatever the more than one classes, if they are dependent on a parent class, then we will call it as a generalization or inheritance. Coming to the next one, identifying the classes for the courseware management system. So till now whatever we had discussed, that are the symbols or the notations of a class diagram. And coming to the case study, here we are going to use the classes like one is the course administrator, tutor, that is the next one is the student, course, topic and course calendar. So before going to draw the class diagram, we need to identify the total number of classes. And here is the overall diagram of class representation for an courseware management system. This is a parent class, and from this parent class we can find all the child classes. Depend upon the dependencies, we need to give the relationship among the classes. And accessifier also can be mentioned, that which class is accessing the elements from the other class. So this is all about a simple case study to draw the courseware management system. So before going to draw the class diagram, we need to identify the total number of classes out of that class, which is a parent class or which is a child class, and what is their dependencies and what are the relationship among these classes. Thank you.